like to ask everyone to please be seated. Please find seats. This way we'll be out of here at 8:15 on your watch. Just in time. Please come in and sit down. You'll have to hold the conversations till afterwards. There's so many speeches. Just kidding.
That's on slide everyone down. You got everyone. No. Oh. Okay.
Welcome to the Atlanta Scholars Kollel 2018 Tribute to Jewish Learning. This year we celebrate 30 years of Jewish learning and Jewish teaching, and we honor our founding funders, through whom, more than 30 years ago, the Kollel got started, and without whom we would not be here today. In addition, this year, we also are very grateful to Peyton and Elaine Alexander for commissioning a Sefer Torah for the Kollel in honor of Elaine's father, Bobo Arbach, a dear friend and supporter. May his memory be a blessing, and may the writing of the Sefer Torah and the use of the Sefer Torah be a merit for his soul. Amen. A Sefer Torah is the most sanctified object that we have in Judaism. We are not a religion in which we worship objects, but we are a religion in which we have sanctified objects, which we show respect to. And of those objects, the Sefer Torah is the most sanctified. It is the source of our connection to God, our study of the Torah, our adherence to the Torah, our teaching of the Torah. That is how we connect to Hashem, to God Himself. When we have a sanctified object, we treat it with respect, as we all know. And we treat the Sefer Torah with great respect. One of the ways that we respect the Sefer Torah is that we stand when a Sefer Torah is transported from place to place. This is a well-known rule. We do that in synagogue all the time. But it is often not well known how that law is derived. From where do we know that one is to stand when a Sefer Torah is moved from place to place? If you read the entire Torah, from Bereshis to the end, nowhere will you find a verse that says, stand when a Sefer Torah is transported from place to place in front of you. So how do we know it? And the answer, the Talmud tells us in Tractate Kedushin on 33b, is that the Torah does say, Mipnei seva takum v'adarta pnei zaken, that one is to stand when a Torah scholar passes in front of them, in respect for the Torah scholar. And the Talmud says, the Gemara tells us, Mipnei lomdeha omdim, if we stand before those who study the Sefer Torah, Kol shekein mipaneha, all the more so, we should stand before the Sefer Torah itself, which is that which is being studied. At this time, the Alexanders will be formally presenting the Sefer Torah to the Kollel. Peyton will be carrying in the Sefer Torah, accompanied by the Kollel rabbis. We have the opportunity now to do this mitzvah of showing respect for the Sefer Torah as we stand to greet the Sefer Torah. I ask you all to please stand now as the Torah is brought into the room.
Please be seated.
Into the mic, into the mic.
Rabbis, families, our family, the honored the honored 15, 20 people They put the seed money up 30 plus years ago to make Atlanta Scholars Kollel possible. A esteemed rabbi from Yerushalayim and his Rebbetzin. About 96 years ago, Benny, no middle name, Arbach, was born in Atlanta, Georgia. He was down where they lived, where the old football stadium, Atlanta Falcon Stadium, was, still is today. He was raised Orthodox, according to a story that Pop told, though. When Rabbi Feldman came 75 years ago, he says, "You think you're Orthodox, I'm going to teach you what Orthodox is." So, Pop's father, Abe Arbach, would go on Friday afternoon and buy tickets to the movie theater. And then after shul and after Shabbos lunch, the four boys and the daughter would go to a movie. Pop told many stories. He was Shomer Shabbos until he was went into the Air Force. He joined the Air Force in World War II. So he was called in at Fort McPherson. So it was a Friday afternoon. And there's this train out there, and all these inductees are getting on the train, and Pop says to the sergeant, I can't get on that train. It's almost Shabbos. I don't ride on Shabbos. The sergeant said, "Boy, get on that train." So he did. He was a gentle man. He was loving. Family was most important to him. If anything, he was probably too friendly. He would get on an elevator, and when he got off at his floor, people would say, "Good to see you, Bobo." So he's always talking to people. He's the only guy I know that goes in the bathroom and talks to somebody by the urinal. When this idea came up, it wasn't Elaine and I's idea. We had never really thought about giving a tour. Rabbi Lipschitz came out, McCall Lipschitz of Kollel, and he presented this to us in a very sweet, loving way. And we told him we'd think about it, and a couple hours later we made the decision. It was what we wanted to do. If it's possible that someone in heaven is able to see this, Bobo Arbach would love it, because he did like attention. He went to shul every week almost, unless he really couldn't make it. He loved going into Kiddush. He had a place that he sat, and people would come over and say, "Good Shabbos, how you doing, Bobo?" And he absolutely loved it. Made his day. The last time he went to Beth Jacob, I was waiting out for him and waiting, and he didn't come, so I went into services. And Elaine went out, so he showed up, and they were trying to get him out of the car. And he just had a very difficult time. So Elaine said, "Daddy, why don't you go back home?" And he says, "I'm going to shul." And he was out in the lobby later that day, and I think it was Andy Lewis that came by, and I mean, he just perked up. He just loved people. So, Bobo Arbach, we've missed you. We hope that that this Torah brings merit to your soul. You are a good guy. Thank you.
to put the Torah in the ark, please stand up. You may be seated. Back in August of 1987, three families, Deutsch, Schwartz, and Silverman, left Yeshiva Lane of Ner Israel Rabbinical College campus and moved to three homes on Bramble and Holly Lane in Beth Jacob Ghetto of Toco Hill. 6 months later, we were joined by the Friedmans, and the rest is Kollel history. Tonight is dedicated to Hakaras HaTov, appreciating the good, expressing our appreciation, being grateful to the original supporters who had the vision to help start this Kollel. Over the years in this venue, we've highlighted our impact on the community. Tonight, we just want to acknowledge those individuals, those families who pulled together, anteed up, and invested in something they really had never heard of. We hope they're proud of their investments. More on that in just a few moments. An evening like this is not possible without the help of many individuals, all doing their part. Our office staff, Marcia Sternberg, Mrs. Randy Goldberger, Mrs. Leah Pollack, our very special volunteer for this event, Mrs. Stacy Morris, the daughter of Elaine and Peyton Alexander. Alan Smyrn, the AKC, and the very dedicated staff of the rabbis and wives of the Atlanta Scholars Kollel. I want to mention the advisory, the Kollel Advisory Board, which we rely on quarterly for input. Tonight in the audience are three members of the board of Yad B'Yad. That's the Jewish club that meets at Woodward. It is the beginning of their spring break, and they came with their teacher advisor, Mr. Brian Jackson, because they appreciate what the Kollel does at Woodward Academy. Last but not least, this evening is also dedicated to all of you, our donors and supporters, who keep enabling the Kollel to teach Torah. For the past several years in this venue, we presented a Bernie Marcus Scholar Award to a college student who is ignited by the inspiration and teaching of the Kollel campus rabbis and decides to stop their professional pursuits, their schooling, in order to spend a little bit of time in Israel studying in a yeshiva or seminary. I would like to call upon Rabbi Yaakov Fleschel, the Kollel and Meor Emory campus rabbi, and Emily Calhoun to present the Marcus Scholar for this year.
Thank you, Rabbi Silverman. So every year, the Kollel honors a college student for their excellence with the Bernie Marcus Scholarship to Learn in Israel. This year, we honored to have Emily Calhoun from Emory. What's remarkable about Emily is that she solidified her decision to learn in Israel after experiencing Purim in the Toco Hills community. What impacted her was seeing the happiness and love of the community. It's amazing how we all can have an impact on someone without even realizing it.
Hi everyone, my name's Emily Calhoun, and I'm very honored to be here tonight. Growing up in an interfaith home, I was always aware that I was Jewish, but I didn't know how to fit that into my identity. Home for me was Augusta, Georgia, a town that, although possessing of 2 shuls and about 1,300 Jews, is also a town where I was often the only Jewish person in my school and sometimes the only Jewish person that my friends had ever met. With that sort of pressure, coupled with my father's desire for me to be baptized in the Methodist Church, it was often easiest for me to pretend that I wasn't Jewish at all. Because of this, as well as internal family issues, I didn't have the opportunity to attend Hebrew school. I never received anything more than a cursory Jewish education, certainly not one that could adequately explain what it means to live a Jewish life. When I entered college, I had not been to church for several years, but I still felt that I needed to know more about Judaism and how Judaism fits into my life. I found the beginnings of these answers, along with a more in-depth Jewish education, through Maor at Emory with Rabbi Fleschel. I participated in his Maimonides program, which introduced me to a variety of scholars and speakers who helped me to begin to answer a lot of the big questions I have, such as, how do you live a Jewish life? How can someone be a part of the modern world while living the values we have in the Torah? Maimonides also introduced me to the Toco Hills community. I have been so blessed to have met so many families here who have hosted me for Shabbatons and holidays, families whose commitment to one another and their values has inspired me daily. These families have inspired me to go to seminary, to truly engage with Jewish texts and explore what Judaism means and how it can shape my life. I look forward to being able to explore these questions in Israel, and I cannot thank you guys enough for this opportunity.
In the summer of 1983, Ner Israel decided to send their seed program to Atlanta because Rabbi Ilan Feldman was there and they had long communication and attachment between the Feldmans and the Ner Israel Yeshiva. We came down to Atlanta and were housed here in Atlanta, and we discovered a wonderful thing. We discovered a community of people that was yearning, starving for real Torah education. When we arrived in Atlanta, I had our first meeting with Rabbi Ilan Feldman. He was the assistant rabbi at Beth Jacob at the time, and he was in charge of the program. One of the questions I asked him was, what would you like to call this program? He said, I don't care what you call it, just get the word kollel in there. So one Saturday night near the end of the program, a few of us were sitting around just kicking back. It was Rabbi Ilan Feldman was there, I was there, and a young couple named Chuck and Leslie Lowenstein. Chuck and Leslie were real movers and shakers in the community. Chuck said to Rabbi Ilan Feldman, Rabbi, I don't understand. Why can't we do this all year long?
And it wasn't easy, that's for sure, because people here had no idea what a kollel was.
We didn't know what a kollel was.
First of all, we didn't even know what the word kollel meant. It had to be explained to us what it was.
The strategy that we developed for fundraising for the kollel was we were going to enrich the community by creating an extra resource that would make Atlanta a destination for people who grew up here, who are now leaving and never coming back.
Our goal was to raise a third of the annual costs of running the kollel the first year. So if the first year's budget was $180,000, so 60 of it was coming from seed money, which was coming from out of town, but then we wanted to raise 60 in a few days. So Rabbi Feldman lined up at maybe 15, maybe 18 people that we visited, one after another after another.
Since 1954, Southern Jews were absorbing the message of the centrality of Torah as the lifeline of the Jewish people through the passion and commitment of Rabbi Emanuel Feldman of Congregation Beth Jacob. In the summer of 1987, they were called upon to support this new kollel endeavor. What was their reaction?
I saw Alan Shaw in the subsequent years. I felt bad because Alan Shaw was one of the first supporters, and I sold him, so to speak, the kollel on the idea that his son, you want a chance for your son to come back and live here in Atlanta? This is your ticket. And he bought it, and his son never moved back. One particular, the wonderful couple, Eleanor and Larry Bogart. Eleanor had been out, I think she had been out shopping. And is that right? Do you remember she joined us in the middle of the meeting?
She was in the middle.
Yeah, she came in the middle of the meeting and she sits down And we caught her up on the discussion, and Larry, I think, mentioned a number. And she sat there, and there was a long pause, and I thought that she was going to raise skeptical questions about the value of this enterprise. And then she said,
But it wasn't enough.
And Alma insisted that we give more.
George Kaplan, may he rest in peace. And George peppered us with skeptical questions, and this was going the wrong direction. And then he, as he stood up, he said, I'm in for $5,000. Steve agreed to meet with us on his way to the airport. We described to him what we wanted to do, and we said that we needed to raise $60,000 in order for this to be a viable thing. He said, $60,000 will be no problem. So I said, do you mean we just raised it? Or do you mean you think that other people are going to give it? And he said, you go out and try to find the money, but whatever you need to get to 60, I'll back it up.
My biggest challenge was the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. And frankly, I remember when I first came down here for my first interview, and they asked me, so tell me, what's your 5-year plan? And, you know, I know what a deer in the headlights looks like. Then I knew what it felt like.
Because we discovered that whenever my wife gave us a bracha before we left the house for our next appointment, things went well. So we made sure that Miriam gave us a bracha. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
The Kollel helped make Atlanta a destination city.
Absolutely.
For young Jewish professionals and Orthodox Jews. That was unusual.
Women gave classes to women. And these were women that we could see were strong women and educated women. And they also were about authentic Jewish lifestyle.
It was an investment, and it's probably one of the best investments I've ever made because the dividends that the community has reaped, and my family also.
It was one of the best investments you ever made. When Rabbi Feldman and Rabbi Deutsch came and told us, we sort of understood. We didn't think it would ever affect our lives, but we were more than happy to support Rabbi Feldman. And then, fast forward 30 years, guess whose son is a Kollel rabbi?
I practice emergency medicine and pediatrics at Children's Healthcare in the ER. I always try to make time to daven and shul and learn from the best of the Kollel rabbis.
I strengthened my connection to Judaism with Rabbi Gelbtach while a student at Georgia Tech.
I can honestly say that my son, Micah, who is in 5th grade at AJA, would not have the benefit of a Jewish education if it weren't for the learning that I began with the Atlanta Scholars Kollel over 20 years ago.
The Kollel has been an inspiration for me and my family in many ways. It caused us to join a conservative synagogue where our daughters became B'nai Mitzvah, and I have become a regular Shabbat morning attendee.
We met as singles at Sunday Night with Silverman, attended Kollel Lunch and Learns and Shabbat programming, had a big, fat Orthodox Jewish wedding where Rabbi Dave balanced a high chair containing a child on his chin. And the rest is Jewish history.
We are joyfully raising the first Torah-observant child in close to 50 years from both sides of our immediate families. Thank you, Kollel, for being a beacon of light to warm our neshamas.
The Kollel has reinforced my ability to have a meaningful relationship with Hashem and has shown me that my spirituality has helped me throughout many life challenges. Our lives wouldn't be the same without the Kollel. I'm fairly sure we wouldn't have married if the Kollel rabbis weren't steering our ships towards each other. We have much to be thankful for to all of you.
Ask's rabbis, Kollel educational opportunities, and subsidized trips to Israel have infused the spirituality of Judaism into our family.
I am a psychiatry resident with Emory.
And I do commercial real estate.
We both took Maimonides with Rabbi Golding, went to Israel. Our shidduch was made by the Gelbtuchs, and Rabbi Gelbtuch officiated at our wedding.
We are grateful to the Atlanta Scholars Kollel for being a constant support, inspiration, and reminder of living lives of Jewish values and purpose. Our 18 honorees this evening are an eclectic group. Doctors, a dentist, researchers, lawyers, real estate investors, chemical engineers, business people, even a rabbi from New York, Rabbi Avram Fruchthandler. Don't worry, they are not all going to speak. 30 years ago, these individuals were at many different stages of their own Jewish journey. They were at different stages of family life. However, they shared two common things. One was a profound connection to Rabbis Emanuel and Rabbi Ilan Feldman, and the other was a concern for the future of the Jewish community of Atlanta. Sometime last year, I began contacting this group, explaining to them that the Kollel wanted to honor them, bring them together, and thank them for their vision at the beginning of our journey. There were some challenges getting the message across. The first question many asked was, well, how much money is this going to cost us? 6 of the families had made Aliyah to Israel. The shul contact for one of those families was incorrect and no one knew where they were. Unfortunately, 4 of the husbands are no longer alive, although they are, no doubt, continuously reaping the benefits of their initial investment. Another issue is that when I asked Betsy Kaplan to interview for this project, she looked straight at me in the eye and said, I don't remember a thing. Even trying to figure out who was an original donor before the Kollel started proved challenging. I found a letter in our historical files. There's one box left that Marcia is guarding with her life that proved that one of the families was in this distinguished group, even though neither Rabbi Deutsch nor Rabbi Feldman remembered that they ever solicited them. As many of you know, the Kollel family's Mesiras Nefesh, our selfless dedication to sharing experiences like Shabbos and Yom Tov meals, Torah learning, teaching, and outreach, has helped revive the spiritual infrastructure in Atlanta. So tonight, I would like to call forward representatives of 10 of those families who were willing to invest in bringing an outreach kollel to the South. As I call your name, please come up to the front of the podium, and please, I ask the audience just to hold your applause until the end. Mr. Larry and Mrs. Eleanor Bogart, Mrs. Bev Levinson, together with her son, Dr. Avi Cooper. Avi's father was the first actual donor to the Atlanta Scholars Kollel. Dr. George and Mrs. Barbara Gottlieb, Mr. Yehuda, Lenny, and Sheva Habif, who made the closing on all of our homes, including our own, 15 minutes before our first Shabbos in Atlanta. Mrs. Monica Katz.
Getting married, and the children are having children, and they've created a tremendous community for us. They've become an integral part of the Atlanta Jewish community, not just the Orthodox community, not just Beth Jacob, but they made an impact to the entire community. So many hundreds of people and families have been touched by their dedication and by their idealism and by their talent and by their versatility and by their learning and by their discipline and by their personalities. So it's very, very moving and touching for me to be able to celebrate with them the 30th anniversary. Let me tell you something about another 30th anniversary in which I took part. In 1978, Israel celebrated its 30th anniversary. In 1978, Jimmy Carter was President of the United States, and he decided that he wanted to help celebrate the 30th anniversary of the State of Israel, and he would invite 100 rabbis from the United States to the White House, to the Rose Garden, and there they would have a wonderful celebration. They would invite Prime Minister and Mrs. Begin to come. Fine. I was one of the lucky ones who had an invitation, Estelle and I. And we're looking forward to it. It was going to take place right after Pesach. This story, some of the people in Beth Jacob have heard me tell it before, but it's, I think, important for you to hear it too. It was going to take place, as I say, right after Pesach. And I was sitting in my study the afternoon before Pesach, the afternoon before the Seder. Now, for those of you not in the rabbinate, you may say, though, the afternoon before the Seder is when the women are very busy and the husbands are very busy getting ready for the Seder. You don't know what goes on with a rabbi Erev Pesach a few hours before the Seder. It is a madhouse because the phone is constantly ringing and people want to know if this is particularly kosher, if that's not kosher, and so forth and so on. And I'm sitting in my study trying to prepare two major sermons for the first day Pesach and the second day Pesach, and the phone keeps ringing. My secretary's also gone. She's preparing for Pesach. So I'm all alone. It's about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. The phone rings. I pick it up. It's my good friend Stuart Eisenstadt, who was then chief advisor, domestic policy advisor to Jimmy Carter. Why is Stu calling me Erev Pesach? He says, Rabbi, I've got a big favor to ask of you. We're preparing Jimmy Carter's speech that he's supposed to give in the Rose Garden for the dedication. And we need some ideas because Begin's going to be there and all the rabbis are going to be there. Give us something, some ideas to talk about. I said, Stu, it's Erev Pesach. I have to go to... He says, you know, do us a favor. Okay. You don't say no to the President of the United States. It's a command performance. So I put everything aside. Oh, I forgot to say. He said, could you let us know in an hour or two what it is, please? Of course. No problem. Yeah. So I put everything aside, and I began to think in my panic mode when I think the best. You know, when I'm in panic, I do well. When I'm relaxed, I don't think well. So I came up with the idea, so a flash from heaven at the 30th anniversary is really something that matches that which the sages in Pirkei Avos and Ethics of the Fathers say matches the number 30. There's a chapter in the fifth chapter of Ethics of the Fathers. You look it up when you get home. There's a whole beautiful Mishnah. I'll read some of it to you. It says, he used to say, Reb Huna, when you're 5 years old, you start learning Chumash. When 10 years old, Mishnah, 13, mitzvos, the origin of bar mitzvah. 15 years old, this, and so forth and so on. It goes on up until 100. Then it says, Ben Shloshim Lekoach. 30 is the time of strength. Oh, there, I had it made. 30th anniversary of the State of Israel. I quickly wrote out a couple of paragraphs about how Israel at age 30 will have strength, has strength, his strength should increase, and I had a whole deal about 30 and strength and so forth and so on. I immediately called up Stuart's secretary, and I dictated it to her on the phone, and she said fine, she'd take care of it. That was it. Then I managed to mumble through 2 sermons, the first day and second day of Pesach, and that was it. Oh, so a week or 2 later, we have this beautiful ceremony in the White House lawn. Hundreds of rabbis are there. And Menachem Begin is there, all of a shalom. And Menachem Begin speaks, and then Jimmy Carter gets up to speak. And it's a wonderful experience to see the President of the United States, to hear him say your words while he's speaking. You know, it's really unique. And he says, and he starts declaiming that as the rabbis say in the Mishnah, he could barely pronounce, he couldn't pronounce Mishnah, he said Mishnah, but okay. As the rabbis say, and so forth, and when Ben Shloshim, he said it in Hebrew, Ben Shloshim L'Koach. At the age 30 you have strength, and he went on to praise the state of Israel for its spiritual and physical strength. And I was sitting there, standing there listening to him. There was a rabbi standing next to me. I didn't know him. I don't know who he was. He mumbles something out loud. He says, you know, he's wrong. He says, it's not 30 strength, it's 30 understand. 30 is when you get understanding. So I said to him, I said, and though he continued and he says, what do you expect the goy to know? So I said to him, when you get home, I think he's right. Check it out in your Pirkei Avos, and you may find that this guy knows what he's talking about. That was another 30th anniversary celebration. At any rate, no one disputes the meaning of the Kollel's 30th anniversary. Everyone admits that this is a great milestone. And may Hashem grant the members of the Kollel and the members of the Jewish community who take part in the Kollel and study in the Kollel, who grow from the Kollel, and who are proud of the Kollel. May He grant you koach and strength, and may you go mechayel achoyel, from strength to strength. And since yesterday we completed the book of Shemos, the book of Exodus, and we said chazak chazak, v'nis chazek, be strengthened, and we'll all be strengthened. May all of you be strengthened, all the wonderful rabbis whom I didn't mention by name because there's a whole long list and I know I'd leave someone out. But all you wonderful rabbis, I know who you are, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu above knows who you are, and may He grant you and your family strength. Chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek, amen v'amen. Thank you.
Since we were founded in the 80s, we took a song from the 80s. Some of the rabbis on this stage were not alive in the 80s.